So Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. We welcome in the director of everything at Elite Prospects, our guy Cam Robinson, who is back from Buffalo and the NHL Scouting Combine. Did you get a good wing?
I got a good wing. We went to Gabriel's Gate. It never disappoints. I wouldn't mind trying another spot. I guess there's some others that everybody says are the best you have to try. But we end up at Gabriel's Gate, and I always eat too much, and it's a great time. So, yes.
What's your flavor of choice?
We just sat down. There was 5 of us, and we ordered 60 medium hot. They weren't hot, but they were delicious. They were delicious, and they're like the size of your fist, right? Like putting back 10 or 12 of those is still an accomplishment.
Yeah. From time to time when I was in newspapers, my editor would come around in my cubicle. He'd tap me on the shoulder on a big story I was working on and say, Matt, I need a notebook dump. Cam, you covered the Combine. I need a notebook dump, buddy. What can you tell us about your activities in Buffalo? And what you
beyond the wings.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought that was going to be a wing anecdote already. I was like, are we going for a safety meeting for wings or like what's going on? I mean, as far as notebook dump, I think that there was an incredible amount of information being passed around there. A lot of it, questions too, right? Like, senior VPs or AGMs being like, this is what we're hearing. What are you hearing? Like, it's a lot of guesswork because obviously no one wants to show their hand too much. I know I talked to a few teams there that didn't take any players out for dinner purely not to tip their hand. I had another team that took several players out for dinner and kind of gave me that cheeky side smile when I asked them, like, oh, was it a little taking a couple extra there too? And, you never know, right? Like so there's a lot of gamesmanship going on. As far as kind of some of the names that are around that Canucks top pick, we know that several teams like Ivar Stenberg, he went out for dinner with San Jose, he went out with Vancouver. Toronto didn't take McKenna out, but they went and visited him in Whitehorse, and then he's coming to visit them in Vancouver. So he's around there. I know Keaton Verhoeff, he had dinner with Seattle. I believe San Jose took him out as well. Chase Reid as well too, with Vancouver and San Jose, and so there's a lot of teams with a lot of interest, and basically the kind of the crux of it is the way people are kind of talking is that, not a surprise, San Jose holds the key to all this, right? Yeah. And everybody pretty much thinks they're going to do one of two things: that they're going to take a defenseman right at 2, or they're going to slide back probably a maximum of 2 spots to ensure themselves getting one of Chase Reid or Carson Carels, which they really like, both those players. And they know if they slide back to 4, they're almost guaranteed to get one of them. So they don't want to slip further back than that. If they stay at 2, I think there is still a world that they take Ivar Stenberg. I personally believe that. And that's just kind of based on how Mike Grier has operated before. But they hold the keys there. And then it kind of gets down to what Vancouver does, what Chicago does. And I think the Rangers and the Flames will just take whoever's remaining from that top tier at 5-6. So I think we're gonna see this the same names, but it's going to be in funny orders.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because we did the item earlier. Scott Wheeler, The Athletic, published his mock draft, and he had Ivar Stenberg going number 2, and he said, I'm having the toughest time getting a read on San Jose. He thinks that could be by design, but his thoughts were plan A, Stenberg, plan B, if someone's willing to give them something to move down a couple of spots, they're going to go back and take the defenseman.
Yeah, it's interesting because like they did a great job. Mike Grier and company did a great job last year too, right? Like we had people like tapped in people talking about like, we think it's Frundell, others saying we think it's Misa, others saying like we think they could legitimately move this pick. And it feels like we're going down that same path again this year. My gut has always said it's going to be Stenberg at 2, but that's purely, I think, based on how I would go about things. And it seems like what Grier did last year and getting Misa when, did you need another center? Maybe not, but you just take the best player available on your board. And so for me, that's Stenberg. And I know a lot of teams feel that way too, but then judging just like the 10 teams that I got the scout poll from, it is far from a consensus, right? We had Malhotra, Stenberg, McKenna, and Viggo Bjork all landed in that number 2 spot, depending on what team you were talking to. So there is a debate there still.
Yeah, so that begs the question then, Cam. What were you able to pick up in terms of the Canucks at 3 or the Blackhawks at 4 desire, appetite to move up to 2?
I think I didn't get much that Vancouver was interested in moving up to 2, to be quite honest with you. I think that Vancouver at 3 is a good spot because you're going to have a choice between Stenberg and Malhotra. Like it's in all likelihood, you're going to have that opportunity there. I think if we see Reid or Carels go, and if you don't, then you just have Malhotra, and then you have the choice between Malhotra and Reid if you want to go defense in that option. So they're going to get one of their top 3 players, I think, and they're going to feel pretty good about that. Now, a team like Chicago, they're in an interesting spot because I think they could do a few things, and I think they're listening on a few things. I think they're open to moving that pick completely and getting an impact player like a Matthew Nyes or something like that to put next to Bedard. I think that they would also be interested in moving up to 2 to make sure they get their guy. And I think that they really, really like Chase Reid. I think that they're very high on Chase Reid. I think they like Keaton Verhoeff a lot too. As far as the teams in the top 5, they might be the highest on Keaton Verhoeff. So a lot of fans are looking at that being like they passed on Ivan Demidov a couple of years ago for Levshinov. Are they going to really pass on Stenberg to go with the D-man? And I think that that's a very valid thing that could happen.
So this Verhoeff helium is real in your mind, beyond just Chicago, or do you think other teams are interested now too?
Yeah, I know Seattle took him up for dinner and that they're very high on him as well, and they're picking 7. So I do believe he's going to be gone probably by that point in the draft. It's not surprising that he did very well at the combine. He's a very personable kid. Like he's very open and honest. And I think like just chatting with him multiple times over the weekend and the week is that he recognizes his limitations. And I love that. It's refreshing from a younger player is that he told me he's like the entire offseason is dedicated to quicker, more explosive feet. Like he's like, I generate a ton of power. He even brought out his phone and showed me all these like tests that they were doing on him as he's on the machine and the skating wheel and stuff like that. And that everything's about getting quicker feet. And so having that awareness and being able to articulate it to a group of scouts and executives and while being 6'4" and 215 pounds and a right shot kid, it's like, he's going to sell some teams. I knew he was going to sell some teams in the combine. I think he did well at that too. So if he can add a little juice to his step, it's like, that's going to be a good pick in the top 7. Like the potential is there to be a very good pick. Yeah, I think Vancouver likes him still too.
I wonder if he's going to be like a Hughes. Like we always marvel, like how did Quinn Hughes go all the way down? I wonder if somebody just gets a really amazing player in Keaton Verhoeff just because the weird year that he's had. I do wonder, is there any chiseling away at 1 yet? Are you seeing any doubts there?
I think by and large, everyone believes it's going to be McKenna. But Chaika, and I spoke to him a number of times too. This was my first time actually being in a room with him, and we chatted multiple times throughout the week, and he's a very friendly guy. And he's saying all the right things, that they view that as a tier, similar to the way I view it as a tier, right? That there's 5, maybe even 6 players in that grouping that belong in the conversation at number 1, that at the end of the day, you could see them being the best player from this class. And so I think that they're doing their due diligence on that. And I don't want to discount that there is still a world. I think that they could go Chase Reid. They could go Caleb Malhotra. I don't think it's very likely that they could go Stenberg. I think if they're going wing, it's definitely going to be McKenna. The safe money, the easy money, McKenna goes at 1, draft starts at 2. But always leave that little bit of wiggle room.
Yeah, so you don't see any separation, like nobody has separated themselves. It's just basically dealer's choice, team's choice on the 3 defensemen, Reid, Verhoeff, and Carels.
I do like. I saw some separation on the list. Is that primarily it feels like Reid and Carels are just a hair above on most teams' lists, anyways. And Carels ended up being number 4 on the scout consensus poll. Reid ended up being 5. Verhoeff ended up being 8. So I do think there is a little bit of separation there. Albert Smits is an interesting one too. In that group, who ended up 7 on that list. Is that some teams really, really like him and think that he's like instant NHLer, can impact your team pretty soon. Others see him as, probably close to NHL ready, but the lowest ceiling of the group of defenders. So he's really an interesting one to watch.
Yeah, he feels like the Reinbacher of this year. That you're like, oh, he's big and he can handle himself, but is he actually going to give you top 10 sort of payout?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and in that case, like, teams look at Daxon Rudolph, where he's kind of viewed lesser than Albert Smits, and basically then that whole group, he kind of falls down with Ryan Lynn and Malte Gustafsson. But he's 6'2", and he's kind of got a janky skating stride, but it goes, and he's got a great shot, and he put up tons of points in Prince Albert. So it's like, if you want to go on a player that actually has the upside to do something up your lineup and not just be kind of a hammer in a middle pair. Like, he's the guy you take a chance on. He reminds me a lot of Brant Clark. So it's like, if he goes to the right organization and gets opportunities on a power play, he's going to generate a lot of points. And
Canucks
he's going to Denver now too.
Canucks aren't taking a defenseman though? You don't think there's a real world where they're taking a defenseman?
I mean, they should take a good hard look at Chase Reid, and if you walk out of there with Chase Reid at number 3, I think you're doing just fine, and I think you're setting yourself up for the long run here, right? And I talked to a couple of agents about this too, and they were saying, like, everyone's focused on Caleb Malhotra. He's the best center in this class. Yes, it's a center light class, but just take the best guy, because you're going to be bad for multiple years. You're not going to take a forward this year because you're going to get Landon Dupont next year, because you're probably not going to get Landon Dupont next year. And then there's going to be more forwards available too. So it's like, just take the best guy. So absolutely, I do think, and I think that it's indicative of them taking him out for dinner. He had a good meeting with them. I talked to him about that too. I think they like him as well. So I don't think it's, again, I think that Stenberg, Malhotra, Reid probably are the 3 at the front here. And I do think that they still have interest in Verhoeff too. And they should have interest in Carels, but haven't heard too much.
Is there any part of you that thinks the Canucks are sandbagging with Malhotra, that they're not going to introduce that dynamic to the room now that Manny is the head coach?
Can't get away from that.
I don't know. I don't know if they're sandbagging it. I don't know. I do know, like, it was interesting. Caleb Malhotra was kind of under lock and key this week, that week in Buffalo. Like, most of the players were free flowing out into the lobby of the Marriott there at that restaurant where all the agents and all the execs are hanging out and the media are there. And like, they're going around glad-handing and taking one-on-one interviews with media people. Malhotra under lock and key. And, like, I was talking to his agent trying to get him. I wanted to even just have 5 minutes with him, 3 minutes with him, I was saying, and you couldn't get him. He came out one time and he quickly skittered out of there. And so the first time we really got to talk to him was when he was up on the podium with a whole bunch of people, mostly from Toronto, right? And so, yes, we asked him how it would feel about if he was being coached by Manny, and he said, we're both pretty professional. I think we'd be able to handle it. But kind of around the room, also people are talking about, like, maybe it does make him feel a little squeamish to have your dad as the coach, and maybe the organization recognizes that. And if both Manny and Caleb are like, yeah, we'd be fine, but maybe that's enough to nudge them away.
Okay, well, outside of the lock and key, tell us about Malhotra's week. I mean, Stenberg didn't test; he put his work down at the World Championships. We mentioned yesterday that Caleb didn't finish top 10 in any of the different physical tests, but you tell me, how do you think he showed for evaluators in Buffalo?
I think he did fine. I think he's a player that he's not. It's an interesting one, because when you're long and lanky and you're not filled out yet, a lot of these tests can be harder on you too, right? So a lot of smaller players, especially with things like pull-ups and bench press, where it's based on how big you are, that they're going to have an advantage. If you're a growing kid, and he is clearly still growing and putting on masses, that I didn't expect him to really pop. A kid like Mathis Preston, who we can talk about later, did very, very well. One of the top performers in that. And I think Gavin McKenna did very, very well, who's also kind of hasn't grown much. He's starting to fill into his body. That's about the frame he's going to be. So I think he did well. And I think that, I did hear from one team that Malhotra seemed nervous, and it was like, big surprise. I think Ivar Stenberg was the most nervous I've ever seen him. And I've seen him in numerous events, and he's very open, and like, he's still Swedish. So, you take it with a grain, but like he was like shaking when I was talking to him. And I was like, we've hung out a few times. Like, don't worry, anything you say, if you don't want me to say it, we can start again, right? Like, it's all good. But so everybody's a little on edge there. So Malhotra being a little nervous in one of his interviews isn't surprising either. But I think he did well, generally well. And when you're at that spot in the draft, when you're looked at that highly, unless you bomb the combine, it's not going to affect it too much.
We did the item earlier. It sounds like a lot of scouts came out of the combine a little bit grumbly about the overall quality of this class. Did you pick up any? Yeah, you're not in your head, Cam. Talk to me.
Well, I think I said it on this show earlier that a director of amateur scouting, when I was talking to him about this class, just said, I hope we trade all our picks because I hate them all. Like, and, obviously a bit of tongue in cheek there, but I'm not gonna lie. He reiterated it. He doubled down on that when I saw him in Buffalo too. He's like, how are the interviews going now? Well, but I hope we don't pick any of them. So it's true. At the same time, there's more lighthearted and positive framing people out there too that think that there's going to be good players in this draft class. That's inevitable. There's going to be some good at the top. There's going to be some good in the middle. We're going to see guys go in the 5th round that you're like, holy smokes, where did he come from? That's just how it goes. So your job is to find those guys. Is this class a little janky? It is. It's a weird class. It's heavy on certain things. It's light on others. It dies quickly on high end skill. But your job is to find the ones that you think can play at a high level. And I think we're going to see teams. We'll see. We're going to see the ones that prioritize, hey, we got a player that played 200 games in the NHL. Doesn't matter if he was a 7th or 8th defenseman. We got that player. And then we're going to see teams being like, why bother drafting that player? We can get him at 27 when we actually need him. Let's swing big on talent. If it breaks right, great. If it doesn't, have fun in Europe, and we'll keep on moving. And we're going to see the difference between those mandates.
So the Canucks have got a bunch of veterans. Some of them are easier to trade than others, obviously. The question would be, do you try to trade a veteran before the draft or at the draft to get another pick in the first round or thereabouts? Or do you save that veteran, let him start the season with you, and try to trade for something next season? Hear me out, though.
Or in season.
Yeah, in season for something for next year's draft. Hear me out, though. Like, if everybody starts to get the vibes that this is sort of a calm pond sort of draft, nobody's too excited, worked up about it, can you catch somebody sleeping and get better value trading for a top 15 pick if nobody's that excited about the players that are there? Maybe you get a much higher choice. Would you rather have a higher choice in this draft or the 28th next year,
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the question. And I think that you would have to look at that internally and be like, let's say it's Jake DeBrusk or Marcus Pettersson or something like that. And you look at it and you're like, hey, pick 14 is coming up. Pick 17 is coming up. We like this player at number 8. They're still on the board. Let's make a deal. And now you're getting serious value. Now you're getting something that's tangible. You've scouted this player all year. You think that you're getting really good value out of it. But in my mind, when you first brought that up, it's like right away, I'm like, save it. You've already got 2 first-round picks this year. Trade whatever the asset that is next year and get a 27 first, or get a 28 unprotected first, maybe, if you want to prognosticate a team, the wheels coming off a little bit. And yes, you kick it down the road substantially, but maybe you get real value out of that. And those are the type of moves I like to see a team make, is get a little creative. Like, you look at a team like Calgary, they have so many picks this year and next year, early picks. What are you going to do with them? You're going to just take them? You can't draft them all. You're just going to trade like a 6th-rounder this year for a 6th-rounder next year and move laterally? No, let's see you get creative. Let's see you package them up and move up in the draft. Let's see you package them up and get a now player. That's where Vancouver needs to get towards too.
Well, speaking of first-round picks, our never-ending quest to identify a player at number 24, the Minnesota first-round pick that the Canucks own. And today we're going to talk about the pride of Penticton, British Columbia, Mathis Preston. Cam, you weren't very high on him at the beginning of the year, as I recall, but talk to me, because he seems to have some fans here.
I was high on him at the beginning of the year, more so at the end of last year, I should say. After that draft -1 where he looked so good in Spokane, he's got blazing speed. He always looked great for Canada internationally. Wicked release. He's got good handles. It was a struggle this year, though, I would say. It was a struggle in Spokane. Inevitably, they traded him to Vancouver. He got injured right away, right? It was a tough season for him. Playing at the 18s there before, he was fine, but he wasn't electric like you wanted him to be. But I do think that, again, like I was just saying, is that teams are going to have to pick a lane. Do you want the guy that you're like, that's going to be a bottom 6 forward for us who might be able to kill penalties in 4 or 5 years? Great. Or are you swinging on a kid? Because this kid, when you talk about a skill, a draft that's light on skill, he has it. He's one of the best skaters in the class. He has one of the better shots in the class. He just hasn't figured out how to utilize both those in sync with his teammates just yet. He loves to just blaze down the wing and just let her fly. And so he doesn't even let his mates catch up to join the rush and create half the time. So, but like Ryan Lynn said it, and somebody asked him, and they go way back to the Youth Olympics. Like, what do you think about Mathis Preston? He's like, he's a game breaker. He can break it open. And you don't see that too often at the tail end of the first round. And there aren't many of those options this year.
And he's down the wing. He doesn't play in the middle at all, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And some of the ranks you saw there for Mathis Preston, many had him a lot higher earlier in the season. So when you see him at 7, you see him at 10 on some of those lists. That's probably indicative of early in the season. Speaking of lists, I know you have the CAMS consensus on the Elite Prospects website, which is your scouts poll. And yes, there was one scout who had Caleb Malhotra first overall.
Yep.
But I am waiting for the indigenous Cam Robinson, it's in my gut, and now I'm putting it on the screen list. When is the Cam list coming out?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. It'll get out somewhere or the other, right? I've been doing it now for nearly 10 years, putting it out there so that people can go back and point and laugh at me for all the things I got wrong. And I can dig through and find one good thing to bring up and pat myself on the back. So I'm sure we'll get it out here. I mean, I'm heading back to Buffalo in like 2 weeks. So it's like I'll be working on it this week. I got a bunch of big projects coming out the next 2 weeks here. So that'll be one of them, I'm sure.
It sounds like the struggle is real, Cam. You sound torn, bro, on some of these ranks. Is that fair?
Oh gosh, I have a thing that's called my working list, and it just sits there, and it's always open on a tab on my computer, and I look at it. Sometimes in my phone late at night, I look at it and I'm moving places and I'm hating myself. So I'm like, just put it down and forget about it. So yes, I am torn on this class generally. I feel like I have a pretty good feeling about most of these guys. I might go up, I might go down. And just like the teams at the Combine, getting to talk to some of these kids, you know, getting one-on-one time to just kind of pick their brain and see who they are a little bit more down the line. Like, you know, you meet them at the beginning of the year, you see them sometimes at big tournaments, but now you get a chance to really talk to them about their season, about their weaknesses. And that can change things a little bit too. Like maybe it boosts a guy up a little bit. Maybe it drops them down a little bit too, how they did in the Combine. So I try to take as much information as I can, just like the teams.
I'm putting you on the spot this week, but next week I'm going to ask you this too. You can pass right now. Helium guy. This might be a guy who goes from 50th to 30th in your brain, might be from 30th to 15. Who's your helium guy of the week? Who's
on Cam's list, or the guy he thinks is going to surprise everyone and go much higher than?
In your own brain, who's got helium? Who do you really like that you had further down and now you really like? Anybody this week that stands out?
That I think has moved the needle on my personal board?
Yeah.
Gosh, I mean, a kid like Ethan Belchez he's run the gamut with me. Like I, came into the year being like, this guy could pop, and he didn't have a great year, but then he's so unique. And I also got to spend time with him too. And like really well-spoken, towering over me, like got, hockey bloodlines in the family. Like he's one that I could see myself where, I long thought he'd probably end up in the middle of my first round, like could sneak into the top 10 at this point. I think he's probably that guy.
6'4", 6'5", 230. You can't teach that, right? So if you're looking for separators, Belchez is the one bona fide power forward here at the top of this draft. Speaking of draft guides, though, or draft lists, the Elite Prospects Draft Guide is now live. This is your opportunity to promote.
I mean, the work, I think, speaks for itself. It has year over year. It's only gotten more comprehensive, but like visually and the ability now to surf it on the web, right? To click someone's name, to click all the A grades, you have it at your fingertips now. You don't even have to download it. I think that's what I was getting so many like rave reviews from people in the industry, just being like, oh, it's so great to not have to like download this 2,000 page PDF and then type in a player's name. Now you can I want to see all the A grades. I want to see all the guys, the shades of, right? The player comparable. So I think now visually and just the accessibility of it has never been higher. And yeah, definitely go out there and grab it. It's been another year's worth of labor and love from a great team of smart scouts. So check it out.
400 plus prospects. I sure hope everybody the Canucks select is in that EP draft guide. I don't want to have Mackenzie Stewart redux from our first draft, Blake, in Philadelphia, where the Canucks took a player, and Blake and I looked through all of our draft guides and went, he's not in any of them. It's a good segue because there's a new voice in that Canucks room that could sway them away from taking somebody that nobody's heard of. That is Daren Hermiston, the new director of player personnel and player development. What do you think he's going to add to that room? Do you know him well, and what's he bring to the table here, in particular around this draft?
Daren's a great guy. He's I tweeted it. He's hardworking. He's been in the agency game for 15 years. Kind of like a rising guy in it too, where it's like when you start out in the agency world, like you are basically like you're going to youth events, right? You're trying to find the best 14, 15-year-olds, and you're trying to identify them, and then you're trying to convince them to sign on with you without actually signing on, and then you work with them for years and years and years. And so it was just starting to pay off for him, right? Like Sam Malinsky just got that big contract. Like TJ Hughes just came out of school as a free agent. He's got Ryan Lynn in this class, or had. Caden Lindstrom was his guy. So he had, some big name players. Arshdeep Bains, a connection in Vancouver there too, was one of his guys. But, really great contract work, helping those guys. So he has a lot of experience with contracts. Obviously with player identification, that's been his job for a long time now, is identifying good players that you want to bring on to Wasserman, and now they're called the team. But just generally, just a great guy too. I think he's very, very bright. I think he's very hardworking. I think he's going to be an excellent addition to what they're doing there. And I think this was a great time for him to move over as well too. Is that, if he had that offer a year ago, I would have been like, ooh, but now this group's going to have a lot of leash, right? With the twins at the top and RJ, they're going to have a long runway, and he's going to get his feet wet and then be able to impact this club in a positive way. So I'm thrilled for him, and I think the Canucks should be very excited too.
Yeah, and Kamloops guy, Thompson Rivers
That's
University guy as well. So nice to see more BC content. Okay, buddy, we got a couple more of these until we do it for reals. At the end of the month. So looking forward to next couple of weeks, and certainly looking forward to draft night in Buffalo. Thanks for this, Cam.
Sounds good, boys. We'll talk soon.